All right, we're live. When do you guys want to do the prayer? Or I can do it. As long as there's nobody around, I don't want to get fired. Father, thank you for this time we have to meet together with the class. Thanks for watching over us and giving us the strengths and the things that we need, and the spirit to get us to this class. Is, sometimes we get frustrated. We love you very much, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Jimmy, I hope you weren't closing your eyes, dude.
I wasn't. I was like, I feel awkward because if nobody realizes I'm driving, they're gonna be like, he's not closing his eyes during the prayer.
I thought about that after I started. I'm like, I gotta make it quick because if he's closing his eyes, he's gonna die.
No, my eyes were open the whole time.
Good. All right, so going into number 3, choose a student to read the following as a group. Okay, so
we need to share so far experience.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I can do that.
Go ahead.
No, it's all good. So a cool spiritual experience I had. So I didn't get to watch the President Nelson's broadcast when it first came out because we were having our baby. But me and my wife for Family Home Evening, we watched the broadcast, and it was just such an awesome spiritual feeling as President Nelson was talking. It really to me, even though I felt the spirit about it, I still asked because I just believe that when you ask, it allows the Lord to answer. And so even though I had that confirmation that President Nelson and knew that he was the prophet and didn't have any doubts about it, I asked if he was the prophet of God. And the spirit that came over me was so powerful, and it just really reassured my testimony of that God has called him to be the prophet, and I need to sustain and support him, follow what he says. And I just love how in the gospel the Lord doesn't want us to just accept things and just take it for granted. He wants us to ask him, and when we ask him, we receive, and he blesses us with the knowledge of the things that we ask for. And I just have a testimony that's true, a testimony that God has called President Nelson to be the prophet, and a testimony that God answers our prayers, and that when we ask, we receive. Sometimes it's just not what we want to receive, but when we ask, we receive, and he answers our prayers. And I bear testimony of that in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. You got to act a little bit. I haven't personally done that just because it wasn't something I thought about. I just accepted it right away. But it's probably a good idea. I probably should pray about it. And it didn't think to, even though it's kind of direction. I just said, oh yeah, we're good. I don't have to pray about it because we're good.
Yeah.
But I probably should. So thanks for bringing that up.
No problem.
All right. So so far in this course, we have seen a few common threads and takeaways. Founders matter, their experience, their passion, their vision to shape a business. It can make a difference between success and failure. Business plan at the founding stage of a company is a collection of hypotheses. In other words, guesses. Startups create value by systematically testing hypothesis. I say it, hypo. It's not a hypothesis. Hypothesis. I don't know what this is saying. And making changes to, it doesn't say hypothesis, it says hypotheses. But I guess
hypotheses.
Yeah, hypothesis. Well, if I say that too much, I'm not gonna be able to say it. And making changes to the plan and test results indicate need to change. Early tests tell us a lot about viability of a business and where more information is needed. In previous cases, analyze business models and the founders that are already chosen. Now we get to see a company at a moment of choice. And so if you went through this, GenapSys is talking about DNA and the systems and stuff and the business models that they'll use for how to get analysis and data out of DNA results. And there's 3 different options. And the first one is a traditional strategy, razor and razor blades, and data analytics. And Jimmy, I know that you mentioned here. Let me just bring these up. So traditionally is this one's kind of confusing. There's a lot to the DNA and the GMAPs.
Dude, it's a crazy breakdown.
So the first one is the traditional strategy where they've got the device and it's a low cost and it would attract entities unable to afford traditional higher price sequencers. The sequencers is where the data is, and when they basically have a machine and a sequencer, and it kind of channels everything through the device. And they manufacture the machine, or they would manufacture a machine below the major incumbents, and the machine would initially be priced at like $40,000 and then decline over time, and then additional revenues would come from selling the test cartridges for this machine and servicing the machines every other year for the cost of $10,000. The goal is to price the device and cartridges lower than competing products, but still high enough to generate substantial revenue for a short time. The second one, the business model, is the razor blade strategy, which is the price of the machine is between 5 and 7. Brings in a high volume of customers, and they charge $200 for test charges.
Can I throw something in there real fast?
What?
Can I throw something in there real fast?
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the biggest determining factors of the traditional sales strategy that I saw was that the main source of revenue would kind of come from those cartridges or whatever, the ones that they have to keep buying per test. Mm-hmm. And like the test cartridges, but it says later on that those are heavily relied on government grants. Mm-hmm. And like government funding and stuff. So it's not something that's consistent year in and year out. Like, because budget cuts could be like, oh, 1 year it's awesome, and then the next year, sorry, we don't have funding for that. So then they lose out all that money. Yeah, that was it. Sorry, I was just throwing that out there.
No, there's a lot in this case, so.
Dude, there seriously is.
I can't hit everything on this call, but yeah, if there's key points, we gotta kind of go through them. So the second, the razor blade, basically that they would price a machine between 5 and 7, bring in high volume customers and charge $200 for the cartridges, and GenapSys would earn roughly 50% of the profit margin. And so they'd have diagnostic testing with companies and labs. So that would be kind of their customers. They would run the testing. Labs would also be interested. And they can perform high volume by doing that. Both the device and the test cartridge would be priced lower in this model than the traditional one. And basically they're saying management hoped that the increased testing volume would drive revenues. But the concept was only endorsed by one expert. So that's kind of the razor and razor blades. And then the last one was data analytics. And basically they're saying they're not really focused on selling machines, but really on the data that comes out of the machines generated. So it's really more of a data gap, or basically they're looking at the data piece. of it. And my first choice was to do the traditional one, but then I got looking at the data analysis or analytics part, and that one just, for me, like if I was going to vote, and I don't want to sway because we're all supposed to have our own individual, but the data one kind of made sense to me. And you charge by more or less the data versus having, you still have to have the machine, you still have to do the analysis, but you're charging by the data analysis. And I was thinking more along the lines of this once I kind of got through this. And they're saying like that's half the battle in kind of this arena is having the data. You can do all the tests you want, but if the data's not good, then the data's bad, and you could be making, pretty significant decisions off of bad data on the DNA side. So that would be the business model that I favor, but I don't know what you guys think.
The business model I would favor would be the first one, the first option, just because, so I'm taking another case class, and it's all about the disruptive theory. And the disruptive theory supports the first option because it talks about how when you kind of come into a new market, you're wanting to stay below the incumbents in your price level and really attract kind of the unattractive customers. So people who maybe don't want to spend as much or want a simpler or more convenient type item that aren't sought after. And I feel like in that option, if they do that, they're going to be able to not have as much competition from the incumbents because they're kind of serving a different customer's need. And if they do that, they can slowly make their product better and move up into the space where they're able to beat out the incumbents that are there. So that's the option that I favor.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I chose the data analytics one just for the main reason of it's like the newer technology concept to have the cheaper machines, but it'll be way more readily available. So it's not just a few of the companies, but it said over and over again in like the last couple paragraphs of it of just how, like one sentence, the company management believed that clinical diagnostic testing market would take off as the sequences became widely adopted. And analysts believed the market would grow from some 732 million in 2012 to 7.6 billion in 2018. That's just in like the machines alone, but then it's kind of like in the long run, like the future down the path, like it's always been done one way, but now he's bringing a product that's kind of disrupting kind of how it's always been and making it. I like the last one just because it seems like it's more readily available to a lot more different people. And then that would like slowly build it up and finances and everything else like that. And then that type of stuff. That's why I chose it.
Okay. I agree with both of you guys. There are some really good points on each one of them. After we answer those questions, we would, based off of our decision, try to figure out the number of potential customers, which customers would be expected to pay for the product. And I'll answer them as I go. So the number of potential customers, I think with the data analytics is more because you can do, anybody can do, if you have the data, you're broadening who can utilize it. You can have data scientists or analysts look at the information. So the customers isn't per se, who you're selling the device to or the cartridges to. It kind of expands, I think, the customer base and into the millions. As you had mentioned, what would the customers be expected to pay for the product, or which customers? And I think that would be really the researchers, the scientists, maybe hospitals would be the customers. Who are the competitors? Probably anybody that holding the data. I'm guessing maybe the government would probably be in there, and there would be private industries as well that would be competing for that type of information. And then it talks about founders' goals, investors' goals. I think founders' goals is just make the data a little bit more available and more accurate. Investors' goals we'd probably want to have them to have the data integrity, I think, for those. But anyway, that's question 5. I know that was a mouthful.
I'll interject a little bit on that.
Okay.
So I think for the customers, for the option that I chose, it would be unattractive customers, so customers that are wanting a different option than what's available that the incumbents have. And I think for your guys' option, you kind of mentioned it. I feel like it's all the people who, because it's kind of a new product, it's people who don't have any other option needs. Basically, who I would put as my target market would be people whose needs aren't being met right now, and they don't really have any other option.
Yeah, with going along with that too, for the data option, it was saying in the reading that there's potential customers range from major biotech and pharmaceutical companies to government agencies, diagnostic companies, researchers, and physicians. And then for the long-term goal for investors and for the company itself, they ultimately wanted to expand the market to individual consumers to use the machine at home. So it's like either as a way to monitor their own health condition or their diabetes and check their own blood sugar levels. Then even went as far to say as having these machines available to students in schools or colleges or whatever, so that they could be able to sequence anything around them and be able to break it all down.
Mm-hmm. That's good. I didn't even think about that first one, but yeah, you're right.
Yeah, that's kind of all I got on that. It was just from, I just have the page pulled up, and so I saw it, and I was like,
Okay, this one goes into talking about earning before taxes. So using the Excel model you created before class, answer the following questions individually, then compare answers to the group. So the question is, if we increase the EBIAT, earnings before
income and taxes.
Income and taxes. I can't remember off the top of my head. And hold everything else equal. Time to payback increases, decreases, remains the same. So that's if we're increasing earnings and hold everything else equal, earnings before taxes. And on that one I said increases.
Yeah.
Because your earnings your earnings are going up.
Yep, exactly. If your earnings are going up, then
and everything else is equal, time to pay back. I would think it would increase.
Yeah.
The next one is once everyone has responded to the question without help from anyone else, compare answers. All right, so we're gonna go on the honor system on this next one. This goes until so do we all agree on that one? Increases?
Yeah.
The next one is if NOA sales increase, cash flow increases, decreases. NOA, net operating assets, and I have decreases on that. That's just me though. I'll go first.
Say that again.
So if NOA sales increase, cash flow increases, decreases, or remains the same. Net operating assets, I think that's what that is.
So So the first one, if sales increase, then your cash flow should increase, and your assets should. I think your assets would remain the same because the products that you have, your inventory is gonna go down, but the money or accounts receivable that you have is gonna go up. So I think that your cash flow is gonna increase, but your assets are gonna stay the same.
Okay.
I think I might go Jimmy on that one. I just don't know, like, how much. I mean, if everything, the assets are priced out, and you're going to sell the assets, then it decreases. Then you receive the money, and cash is an asset that increases, but then it kind of levers it out.
Yeah, I guess if you look at it from the cash being assets, I was thinking more of like a material, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on, like, if you have your inventory and your and then you're selling for profit, so you're getting more asset in return than it would. But I think typically, usually when you're doing your books, it's the way that I've done it. It's been that your asset level isn't going to change.
Okay, so it's more of like a wash then.
But I think it's dependent upon how you set it up.
Yeah, or how you look at assets, right?
Yeah. Just from basic accounting classes, cash is always listed up underneath assets.
Okay. Same thing. Discuss single response. Okay. I don't know if this is part of maybe Zoom or whatever, but the next question is, and maybe I just missed this in the reading somewhere, on the curve below, which segment represents the highest burn rate? Question. And then it lists the curves A to B, B to C, C to E, and E to F. It's like
What?
A dash B. Yeah. I may have missed, I feel like I missed something either in the reading or there's something on Zoom that when we answer these questions, I don't know. It says on the curve below, which segment represents the highest burn rate? The first one is A to B, A dash B. Second one is B dash C. Third one is C dash E. And the last one is E dash F. And we can't help each other. So I don't know what to do.
I'm gonna choose A dash B.
Yeah, dude, I'm going through the reading and I'm not seeing anything like that.
I went back through as well, and I even did a search because I kind of reviewed these questions beforehand, but I was hoping that maybe you guys had something. I don't know.
It's A dash B.
Why? I'm just kidding. I'm kidding, dude.
Because it's the best choice. I mean, it's pretty obvious that when you look at it, it's right.
I think it's A to F, and that's not even an answer. But I think it would be A to F because you'd be burning through A all the way to F. That's what I would go with. But that's just me. Honestly,
yeah,
I don't know what to say on this one. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, I think we just move past it because I mean I don't know how to reasonably respond to it either. I couldn't find anything. I think there needed to be some more clarification on that. It's kind of out of our hands on that one.
Yeah. Okay, now this one kind of does this next question is a little bit of retro. It says, what strategies have we seen that flatten or lengthen the cash flow curve? Specifically, try to draw cash flow curves for Dr. John's products, Rent the Runway, and Dropbox, as they were described in the cases. Just make a rough guess as to the shapes of each of these cash flow curves. Like, how would the cash flow look? And what strategies have we seen that flatten or lengthen the cash flow curve?
Well, I think the cash flow curve for Dropbox was a very exponential one because they were offering a lot of free services. They would convert the customers over into paying customers once they hit a certain limit, and so it's an exponential on that one.
Yeah, maybe that gets back to that previous question. Like on the curve, right? A to B would be kind of the faster burn. By the time you get to E to F, you're kind of on the tail end of that curve and everything's slowing down. So E to F would be lower. Maybe that's how we relate it back to that question.
Maybe.
I think we lengthen that curve by how we launch the product, like how fast we do it, how fast we basically spend the money to keep the business afloat and profitable.
I think in the A16Zs, I mean they tried to get things out really quickly. I think a lot of the companies like Rent a Runway, I feel like a lot of them really tried to have a steep cash flow statement because they wanted to get to market super quick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry guys, but they're asking like these questions from the previous case studies. Next, describe to each other what would happen to Dr. John's if they had decided to build an independent company rather than get acquired. What activities would John have to do differently? What impact on the cash flow curve would these activities have? Flatten or steepen, shallow or deepen, increase or decrease time to pay back? Dr. John's. Dr. John's?
I'm pulling.
I don't have Dr. John's.
Yeah.
What?
I'm pulling it up to review it because I don't really remember, to be honest.
Yeah, that one printed on the second page and I didn't realize it, so I didn't review it before the whole second page. There's like 3 more questions on it.
Oh, that was the toothbrush one.
Oh yeah.
Oh. So if they had decided to, so if they had to decide to build an independent company rather than get acquainted, what activities would they have to do differently, and how that impact cash flow?
Well, if they built a new company, you're gonna need more cash up front to help acquire all the equipment and everything that you need. So your cash flow would be steeper up front, but meaning that you're going to need more cash. So maybe, I don't know, steeper is the right word to use, but you're going to need a lot more cash up front. But once you've established it, I think that your ability to bring in also going to increase versus the model that you stay, which would be less cash up front, but less cash in the future.
Yeah, I'd
flatten it out a little bit.
Even going with that too, I just reread one of the summary paragraphs on it, and it said financially the company was doing fine. They had raised an additional $500,000 to support initial inventories, and then they also negotiated a line of credit to the bank to support with capital investments. And they had like really good operating profit margins, and a really good Chinese manufacturing partner. So I think if they had a little bit of funding but got even more, and they already had an established operations and sales were super good, and they had a manufacturer partner come on board, I think that that curve may increase with the profits and their revenue and overall. I mean, it might go down initially, or not down, but it'd go up because of investors. But then it'd be a little bit less liability and debt as they paid it off faster.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are good points. It really depends on what the business case when you create the business, what you want to do with it. Is the plan to sell it? I guess you build it differently. Your curve's going to be different. The next things that it talks about is it's asking us to look at the same thing for Rent the Runway. It's kind of the same question, and then how would that impact on Rent the Runway? And that was the dresses one.
Yeah, I think it'd be really similar, honestly. Like they used a lot, had for much cash, like they just burned through so much cash. Continued at that pace, it's like you're gonna crash and burn through like that much. Like really, like kind of scale it back and really kind of prove your model first, not just cash.
Yeah.
And then once you have like a solid model like ready and going, then you can inject it with cash.
Right. One of the parts of the question is described what would happen to like Dr. John's RTR if they thought about independent versus acquiring. And I think one of the things that it doesn't really talk about here, but I think if you're running a company to run it yourself and to be independent and just kind of have your own business per se, versus having built the business to sell it, I think your business that you're running for yourself you're probably going to put a little bit more heart into it, and so I think that would change the dynamics of the company because you truly care about the company versus the bottom line, right? And everything up to this point in all my business classes has always been about the customer and about how you want to build the business. If you build it to get acquired, I don't think it's going to be as good of a business. So I think that it's talking about the curve here, but I think that's another piece that's really important. Because you could spend all your cash up front and then you're hosed at the end, and it doesn't matter because you're going to sell it, but then the company fails. So, who cares at that point?
Because if you're yourself, obviously, you want to make enough money where you can like stay yourself, but you're more worried about the customer and worried about longevity, and so you'll take your time in it. Where if you're just you want to inject, you can get this thing pumping and going, so you can sell it. So I agree with you.
Yeah. Brian, do you have anything else?
Not really. I think you guys just said it all.
What do you guys think about Dropbox and what Drew Houston could do that would favorably impact cash flow? Or what decision did he make that would favorably impacted cash flow curve on Dropbox?
I mean, I think we kind of talked about it a little bit, but I think the decision to offer like the free trial really affected his ability for Dropbox, and then also a professional like version versus like the other that's going to also affect your cash flow a lot, because that's a big section that has a lot of big money that they're kind of like really hesitant to go out in the consumer market area, and that's affecting their cash flow quite substantially.
Yeah, they're giving away the goods without getting any revenue, right?
Yeah. They're just hoping people will like stay on and be like, oh, I hit this number. Okay, yeah, I like your service, so I'll just start paying a lot of money for it.
Yeah. Okay, now let's look at the choices that GenapSys, this is the one that we just read, has from a cash flow standpoint for each business model option under consideration. Compare the following. All right. Net present value. If some of the options have similar NPVs, net present values, which is riskier? Is it advisable to take additional risk for a similar net present value? Let me read that again. For each business model option under consideration, compare the following. Net present value. So comparing the net present value for, I think that's what that's asking, for each one of these. And if they're similar, which is riskier? I'm trying to break up this question because it's a lot.
Basically, I think it comes down to like which has value right now, because that's going to be the most risky net present value.
And it was Dr. John's, Rent the Runway, Dropbox, and the one we just did.
Yeah. Personally, I think Rent to Runway is the most risky.
I think it's talking about, that question is talking about the case study that GenapSys, the 3 different business model options. So like the traditional razor to razor, and the data one, and the net present value for each of those, and which one is riskier.
That makes way more sense.
Yeah.
I think that the first option is risky. I'd say the probably most is probably that option. I'd put middle risk.
I think the data one for me is the most risky, because you could have the data repository and nobody wanting to access it. You spend all that money. You're not making any money because nobody wants the data. Next one, are we good with that one, NPV?
Yeah.
Next one is, how will they raise funds to support each option? Is any option more clearly attractive to the investors? Support your answers in your discussion. So how would they raise funds for each one? I don't remember. What did they say?
I think for investors, the data option is probably the most attractive, because there's the most because it's higher. So depending, a lot of investors kind of like the high risk, high reward, but some don't. Low reward, I don't think is necessarily the most attractive option for investors. Would be the first option. They're going to unattractive customers at a lower profit margin, so it's not like the most but it's less risky. I think the middle option is probably the most attractive for investors, because you have good margins and it's not as risky. So
yeah,
And I don't think you're putting as much up front. You know, when you get the machine in, I mean, if your cartridges and stuff like that go obsolete, then you got this machine that's obsolete, and you basically have assets that you can't even use anymore. So yeah, I think that's a little bit more risky to the end user. You know, whoever it is, hospitals or who's ever running this. Okay.
Right.
For each option, how much of the company will the founders have to give to reach the goal? For each option, how much of the company will the founders have to give? So that's all different, and it's all buried in the case study. So I guess we just have to talk about it. So like in the data one, it was customers would buy the sequencer for $3,000 or lease it for $2,000 per year, and purchase test cartridges at $5,200. Customers would give GenapSys access to a copy of the geometric data generated through the machines for analytical comparison purposes. So, did that answer the question? How much would the company have to give the founders? No, that's more of a customer answer. Sorry, this case study is so big.
It really is. I know the Razor Blade was saying like the machines are going to be from 5,000 to 7,000 and charge like 200 for the cartridges, whatever. I don't really, dude. I don't know. Kind of how it's laid out. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think initially they're going to have a decent amount of money per each option, but there's investors like venture capitalists and everything, right? They're willing to invest in each option.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I didn't read anything to where it was like, oh, well, you have to give up 20% of your company and we'll give you this amount of money. You know?
I don't remember that either. And the question's not that specific. It just says, how much of the company will the founders have to give up?
I think dependent on the risk.
Like on the data analytics one, it's saying towards the end that there's a large portion of the company's like research and development that would go towards software and bioinformatics or whatever. So maybe with whatever option they choose, they'll have to give up a portion of resources for, I don't know, something and devote that to that option's success. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That's maybe what they're asking. But I don't remember something specific. So maybe that's what they're talking about there. I'm kind of going through it.
Yeah, I mean, it is saying that while this ambitious model had the greatest potential reward, it carried high risk. The strategy required significant research and development investments and created large overhead costs. Management wondered if the time and financial requirements would be too much for the traditional investors. So maybe they'll have to give up more equity in the company to satisfy the investors' confidence in that risk.
Well, yeah, just like any investor, if there's more risk, they're going to take more equity just because they want to make sure that they're going to get a return on their investment. If it's not a very risky move, then they're fine with just getting I'm fine with getting a small piece of equity because it's less risk.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so having said all that, I know we voted at the beginning for what model option. We have to put ourselves in, and I don't know how, Estefan Yarpour and Ratigar. I don't know how to say it. Rastigar, the investors, and we must decide as a group which business model we would choose, and we have to explain this in our post discussion write-up. You have to agree.
My vote's for A, just because I think it's going to be easier to get investors on board with that option, and it's less risky for us as starting a business to use that model. Like the disruption theory says that's the model we should go with. And so I just think all around it's less risky for both parties and more likely to succeed and have an opportunity to move up into the market.
No.
What do you think, Brent? It's either I go and I agree, or I go and disagree, and then we're here for another 30 minutes fighting.
There's no point in disagreeing with me. I'm right.
It's A. I gotta go with that. It's safer. Brandon, what do you think? I mean, it is the safest as far as traditional strategy. It's what the economics and I guess the investors are used to. So wouldn't be a new idea that we're pushing through, but the entrepreneurial spirit is not traditional. Typically we would go kind of against the grain a little bit, but I'm kind of weighing towards that just because it's traditional, and it's really, to be honest with you, it's because I don't understand the business enough to go with something I don't really understand.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just for
it's the safe bet, but
yeah, for the case sake and time's sake and everything, I'd probably choose A, but I'm all about high risk, high reward. If it was my company, I don't know. I'd probably choose C if it was real life, but then again, I only read like 5 pages.
So I voted for C at the beginning, but the concern was C, and I'm not trying to sway your opinion. I kind of am, but my concern, I'm a data guy. That's what I do at work. I'm data analysis. That's part of what I do. And the problem with data sometimes is your information that you're selling is only as good as the data that's put in there. So if it's garbage in, it's garbage out. And if your customers start realizing that the data is no good, you've invested all this time, money, effort, and all these things, and it's crap, for lack of better words. And then nobody buys your product, and you've already spent all the money on all this stuff to get it cataloged and set up. So if it works and it's a little less risky, I think it's better, it's cheaper, it's more aggressive. But if it doesn't work, then I'm kind of hosed. But I appreciate the.
I like the. You're good. I like just kind of the future potential, I guess. I mean, it was talking about how it's not just a select few of people who have this technology, but now it's a wide range of people can have it, so that they can diagnose rare diseases and illnesses quicker, treat them quicker to save lives quicker. And if it's that cheap, then a lot more people will be able to do it, and more lives will be able to be saved. But dude, I don't know. I think what is data analytics, like a page and a half of like a huge decision to research and stuff. So I'd probably do traditional for now for sure, but always leaves potential.
Yeah.
I think another kind of argument to put towards doing the traditional sense is the whole investment side of it. Like if you try to go the data analytics side, trying to get investment on board with that is going to be a lot harder because it's a lot more risky. So you're going to have to get a lot more of your company, and that means that your ability to make profit is a lot less because you're giving up more of your company. So that would be another reason why I would kind of stay away from it. If I didn't have to try to get so much funding for it, try to get the venture capitalism, then I would be a little bit more in favor of that option. But I wouldn't want to give up so much of my company.
Yeah.
Yeah, very true. All right, so that's all of them.
Oh, fun. Well, that was a blast.
That was a long. I think I got everything.
That was a long one, dude.
Sorry. I know. I told my manager. I was like, oh yeah, it'll only probably be like 20 minutes. I'm sitting in here. He's over here looking at me. I'm like, what's up, dude? I gotta stay late. Oh, well.
We'll let you go.
All right, guys. I will post this and email you guys the link. And Jimmy, there's another guy that might join our group. His name's Brent. I tried to email him and get his contact information. Brother Nevercur was saying he needs a group. He missed today, but we may get another one. There's another group that he's maybe trying to get into. So
we'll tell Brother Nevercur gives us some extra credit or wants to give us a bonus, then we'll let him in.
Dude, you know what I was thinking? Like we let him watch our video, and here's the entrepreneur spirit, right? But we charge him like $3 to steal our ideas, to have our ideas, and then we make $3 on our video. See?
That's what I'm talking about.
All right, I've said enough. I must be delirious. All right,
guys,
have a good one.
All right, see you guys.
Bye.
Bye.